Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mind Blown Zone episode 45. Tell a new story. Here with Brad. How you doing, Brad?
I am, oddly enough, never better. How about yourself?
I had a feeling you were going to say that. I too am never better, Brad.
All right, that's getting old, isn't it?
Mate, it never gets old.
Let's hope not.
Huh. So we got a good one today. Really kind of new stuff, like cutting edge advice, that you'll definitely want to take to heart as soon as possible.
That's what they're saying out there. That's what the new kids are saying.
I'll read the bumper script to get the juices flowing. Here we go.
Awesome.
This just in, hot and fresh off the press. It is now time, once and for all, to stop living the old story. There's a new game in town. As far as we've experienced since time immemorial, we've unnecessarily carried heavy burdens of regrets and mistakes into almost every day of our lives. The normalcy of this behavior is deeply inculcated. Would anyone want to frequently recall traumatic events of the past and give them meaning now, today, and tomorrow? Science suggests that this behavior is no longer going to cut it. The burden is going to get heavier and heavier. People close to you are going to call you out on dragging the past around and wasting your life. And you're going to be faced with no other choice other than to let it go or let it fully consume you. It is now time to write a new story.
Hey, bravo. That was a great script. Well done. Yeah. So this is an exciting idea that I wanted to say before Matt even introduced anything here. Well, I think we're going to kind of do this one extemporaneously here, ad lib it. We haven't written a heavy outline, so we'll keep it pretty open. And I want Matt to push back as much as possible because this is one of those big ideas that doesn't make a lot of sense to hear for the first time. And I wouldn't have brought this subject up had I not heard it 500 times now in the last 3 or 4 months, specifically coming from channeled sources. So, and these are sources that I trust. If it were just coming for one or two or three, I may not give it the amount of weight that I'm giving it now, but I'm hearing this idea coming from dozens of different channeled sources now. So there's no question that in my mind that this is highly important material, and I want to share it with as many people as possible so that the idea can spread and people can start trying this because it's certainly brand new to most everybody. And nobody's an expert at this. Nobody has the formula. Here's the exact steps you take. It's going to be a trial and error process for all of us as we kind of start to release what I can only call old programming that we've had for as far back as anybody can tell and record the history. What do you think about all that, Matt?
Well, sounds pretty good. Guess we better dive into the specifics of it. What have you been hearing, Brad?
Well, that was the basic summary is that we have, humanity's kind of been in this state of ignorance, held in this state of ignorance for reasons that are, beyond this podcast. So much so that we have been exercising our unlimited powers to greatly limit ourselves and cause misery and suffering galore for as long as we can look back in what's our supposed history. I think most of our history is generally not true, but certainly there isn't any evidence that humanity was wise to this idea, what they were doing to themselves by remembering past mistakes, errors, unfortunate events, etc. So that's been going on, as far as we can tell, since time immemorial, as you mentioned in the bumper script.
So
And
it seems like you're saying that what we've been doing is okay, we'll live our lives, things will happen, we'll be irrational at times, sometimes extremely irrational, bad things will happen. unfortunate, bad luck, etc., whatever. And then 10 years later, we're like thinking about that and just giving it meaning and letting it define us and be our story. And supposedly that's a no-no. Shouldn't do that. Is that the
Well,
idea?
yeah, if we understood how things worked, yeah, you would look at it that way, right? If we were aware of what we were doing to ourselves, we wouldn't do that anymore. And if somebody did do that, right, most people around that person would have the wherewithal to point out to that person that you shouldn't be doing that, right? What's done is done. The past is over. Forgive and forget. Move forward, right? Those ideas would be the prevailing ideas for living out, a harmonious and happy life, right?
Hmm.
But those aren't the ideas that dominate society today, right? People love to wallow in their misery. They love to talk about their failures, their mistakes, what went wrong in the past, why they can't succeed now because of what happened in the past, right? This thing happened and it changed my life. And now I'm going to think about it for the rest of my life. Oh, I shouldn't have done this, or I should have jumped on that opportunity. I shouldn't have, married this person. I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. And it's like this series of regrets to say, here's how I got to this place that I am today as a result of all these things that I keep thinking about that define me, define who I am right now based on past events that I'm not happy about. Yeah?
Well, it sounds really terrible. I know that people have told me many of their regrets and then asked me, well, do you regret stuff? I'm like, regret? No. What's the point of that?
Oh yeah, you're ahead of the curve. Right? I think, certainly all people don't do this, right? But I think this is more normal than not normal. What do you think?
I think some might be a little bit to being Australian. It's a bit of Australian culture to not regret. Just like, what? What are you talking about, mate? That already happened. Get over
Interesting.
it.
Interesting. I
It's
think
not like all
people
Australians follow that, but I detected a bit in the culture.
Interesting. Yeah, I think in America, I think there's a lot more of, some degree of I don't know what, people looking for sympathy, whether they're looking for, misery loves company. I don't know what it is, but I find that people will open up and talk about the things from their past that they're not happy about pretty freely. And
Hmm.
maybe it depends on the peer group or the age group or whatever, but it seems to be fairly common in America.
Hmm.
And again, I'm just speaking with people that I've interacted with. There may be certain subgroups that don't do this, but I would suspect that it's more common than not. But there's no question that even if we aren't talking about these things and openly to either friends or family members or strangers, the the memories of these things come back to us fairly frequently. Do you agree with that?
Sure.
Right? You
Pops
know,
in, right?
yeah, you may be having a good week or a good month or a good year, and then boom, just out of nowhere. I remember that time you screwed up in 2004, and everything went bad. You know what I mean? And this flooding of memories comes back, and this is what's maybe preventing you from trying to start a new business this year, or trying to find a new relationship, or whatever, right? Whatever the thing is, or you're trying to get healthy again, whatever the case may be. There's this memory of this past event or series of events that seems like you weren't able to overcome them then, and because of that you're not able to overcome them now, and they define,
Hmm.
this is why I can't do this thing today, is because I'm not smart enough. And that was proven to me right 20 years ago when I failed at this, or I'm not attractive enough, or I'm too old, or whatever the excuse is, right? I don't, my health has gone bad and I can no longer achieve this thing. And it's a story that we just keep retelling and effectively preventing ourselves from obviously taking our power back by reliving the story in our minds, if nowhere else. You with me on that?
Sure. So let me ask you this, right? So, a lot of therapeutic methods, right? Whatever, Dianetics, hypnosis, psychology, right? A lot of those things, they intentionally recall those moments and then get you to whatever, get a good feeling, like really get in touch with that moment. And then they say process it, whatever, and then it
Right,
releases and then you're healed, right?
right.
So I get the feeling that you're suggesting that even that is like a thing that's been a method that we've been using recently. And you reckon that's gonna be old hat soon?
Well, yeah, yes. Well, yes and no. I mean, so if that's something, if someone's convinced that that's going to work for them, then by all means, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I don't think the what's being shared is saying that that's not going to work for anybody anymore,
Mm-hmm.
or that's a terrible idea. But the essence of what these sources are saying is that this is you don't need to deal with this anymore, right? It's not we aren't being pressed by our karma like we have in the past. So now it's on
Right.
you, right? It's on you're like deliberately raising this subject up again and again and again, daily, weekly, monthly. You're the one that keeps re-embodying this by remembering it, and you're starting basically you're just rebuilding the problem in the present moment, thinking that this is what's dogged you over time, right? So you say, well, it's because you've remembered it 5,000 times over the last 20 years that that this is what prevents you from overcoming it. And like,
Mm-hmm.
doing this, this type of work, this past trauma work or past life regression or all these types of things that have worked for people. I'm not saying that they don't, but in the process of doing that, right, we're rehashing, re-bringing it up. And I think in the past too, there is value to allowing these emotions that have been repressed to come up and be felt. Right? I don't think that's a mistake, right, to do something like that. But it's what you're asking is, should I deliberately try to fix this thing in the past that that I'm unhappy about by reliving it, remembering it, thinking about it, trying to fix what happened versus just not thinking about that any longer? I think that was your question. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. So you reckon that what's starting to be possible? I don't know, maybe it was possible before for mega enlightened people or something like that, but it seems like as if just more regular people are accessing this power or something, is to just like literally just tune out of that frequency and of that trauma and literally just it happened and now it literally doesn't matter. It's just something that happened and it means nothing other than it was something that happened.
Right.
Doesn't
That's
define
right.
anything.
That's right. So, yeah, this isn't like a new ability. I think we said that at some point, but I want to reiterate that it's not something that couldn't been accomplished in the past, right? But it's
Hmm.
now much easier to accomplish than and presumably it gets easier every day going forward. But as you mentioned at the end of the bumper script, at some point it's going to become mandatory, right? Like it's just going to be devastating for those people who refuse to release these negative thoughts from their past, right? It's just going to be physically, psychologically, emotionally devastating to keep on doing that. In other words, humanity up until this point has just kind of been able to kind of lead these lives of quiet desperation,
Hmm.
right? That's how Thoreau framed it, right? Man, I forget the exact quote, but most men lead lives of quiet desperation, so that we've been able to kind of live this, less than ideal zombie-like
Mm.
miserable life for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? Where we just kind of slog through the motions.
Yeah, and we just call it stoicism.
Stoicism, yeah, just, curmudgeony, people just get old and bitter and cranky, and they're on prescription meds, and they're just getting by. It's like you're alive, but you're not living, right? You're kind of locked into this notion, this is who I am because of my past. And
Hmm.
that way of existing is being terminated.
And so, what do you suppose the experience will change to now if one insists on these behaviors?
Yeah, they'll terminate themselves, right? It'll consume them much quicker. Right? If you want
Or
to
they'll just
sit
go
around,
insane? They just
well, I mean, I think we
check out?
know we've talked enough about the cause of disease, right? It's fear and judgment, and obviously this entire podcast is effectively one of self-judgment, right? And that's the big category in GNM is, self-devaluation. So I just think
Right.
it'll, all the many hundreds of diseases that are a result of self-devaluation will probably just proliferate and manifest faster and in more ugly ways, such that it'll kill people faster, right?
Well, this podcast is a happy. I thought this was gonna be a happy one. Tell a new story. Like you going to
Well,
die. Okay, you're going to
we're going to
die.
get to that,
Got it?
right? Well, these are your choices, right? These are your choices. So why would you choose? If now, and I wanted to make sure that in this podcast we made the point because we did the normal versus natural behavior in the past. And so this behavior has been, brainwashed. Society's been brainwashed into this kind of being normal, right? And I've told a few stories about, I'm surprised. I met a few strangers, randomly over the past few months, and they'll just kind of open up and tell me about their past, and which isn't a happy past, and it surprises me. And the story I've told Matt and a couple other people was I was on my way back from the airport taking a bus a couple months ago, and I met a woman, and just sweet as could be. And I don't know how we got on the subject, but she just started telling me how she had been a drug user for 40 years, and it was a strange interaction. And I just remember looking in her eyes, and I said, do you want some advice? And she said, absolutely. And I said, don't ever tell anybody about your drug use ever again. It's not doing you any good. And furthermore, don't tell yourself this story about it any longer. Just drop it, let it go. And she heard me. I could see that she heard me, and she'd never heard that advice before, or never thought of that as a strategy, maybe to get her out of this repeating loop. Um, and I don't know. That was right when I was just starting to hear these teachings from various channels. And I don't know. It was powerful. I saw it in her eyes, and I've since mentioned it to 3 or 4 other people. And I've recognized that they hear it better when I say, instead of tell a new story, it's stop telling the old story is the way that people are hearing it better. I don't know. Does that make more sense to you, Matt?
I guess it's because like their familiarity with the old story. It's like you're referring to something that that they know about. So if you say tell a new story, it's like what the hell's a new story? I can't even think about that.
Right. And it's also impossible to tell the news story like, well, I'm poor and I want to be a billionaire, or I've got 18 health problems and I want to be perfectly healthy, right? Like it's impossible to believe that news story is possible.
Hmm.
So I
Right, right,
think
right.
the easier route is stop telling the old story. I'm not healthy. I'm not rich. I'm not attractive. I'm not smart. Whatever this negative idea you have about the past, and people obviously have experiences that back up the negative idea. Nobody's saying that's not true. They're saying it's time to stop thinking about telling, relating to this story, because it's just a moment from the past that wouldn't be affecting you any longer if you weren't constantly remembering it, reliving it. in your mind. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Just
the real teaching.
to mention something on that, like I'm noticing that when people are telling me their old story, it's very frustrating to hear. Like, I just feel bad. I'm like, what? Stop saying this. Ugh. Why are you saying such bad stuff about yourself? Like,
Right.
oh, what are you doing that for? Like, I'm angry. What are you treating yourself like that for?
Yeah. The more you understand it, the more you see it. Right. And it's like we just have to break through a little bit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And my feedback that I got from these people was, once we got to the part where they said, okay, I won't tell anybody else my negative story,
Mm-hmm.
then we get to the don't tell yourself the story, and they think about it a little bit and they say, I can't help it, I can't stop it. And I get that, right? Like the thoughts come, right? You're reminded that you can't, run a mile anymore or whatever, right? Because you're overweight. And you can't, how do you not tell that story? It's tricky, right? Because that the thought comes, I'm overweight, I can't run a mile. And so there is the way beyond this, I think, is to begin to say, I can stop thinking about this. So it's an intention, like, right? And this is what we talked about just before this podcast. This idea that you are using your power to say, I'm powerless to fix this. Can you hear that? Did I say
Mm-hmm.
that right?
Yeah, well, you can say it again if you want.
Right? You have the power. You can use your power to say, I'm powerless. That's how powerful you are. Right? I'm powerless to stop this. I can't stop repeating this negative story that has dominated my life for the past X number of years, right? I can't help it.
That
That's
seems like a
that's
funny choice to make.
well, if you've done it consistently for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, right? It seems that
Doesn't
way.
feel
It
like a
doesn't,
choice.
yeah. It's like this is who I am. This is my life, right? And
Mm.
for some people, that will be impossible for them to overcome. No question. This isn't gonna. Everybody's not gonna be able to pull this off. But for the majority of people, I think they can and must pull this off. And I think I went down the natural versus normal trail a second ago, but didn't finish my point. In that it seems like this has been normal behavior, right, forever. Like
Yeah.
everybody knows, friends and family members and strangers love to talk about, misery loves company, and people talk about their negative stuff. Doesn't take them too long. And the question is it natural that we would do that, where we'd sit around and think about or talk about something that doesn't make us happy? And the obvious answer to that is it doesn't. We wouldn't naturally do that unless we had been brainwashed into it, inculcated into us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in one of the books by C.S. Lewis where they go to Mars, and they meet the people that live on Mars, they kind of like keep retelling a new story of the events of their life all the way through. They're just like it happened once, but the story constantly evolves to something, more accurate and richer and more rational and more empowering as they live.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of they point out that we kind of like it happens and it has meaning and then that meaning is carried forever. Just
Right.
one time.
And our media and our academia and other resources like to remind us of all the negative stuff, and it almost seems like things get worse as time goes forward, based on what our kind of our dominant institutional forces are doing to us, right?
Hmm.
Which is the opposite of what you just said. But yeah, it could
Yeah.
work that way. Things could get better, right? And, in the news, it's
Yeah.
always, childhood diseases are up 28% over the last 10 years. And, obesity is up 73%, and da, 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 right? And they're always telling us about how things are getting worse, right? Which is
Hmm.
interesting that they're doing that, right? And And because they do that, and then people believe that, then we see those results. So we can see these results on a macro scale and society in general, and the micro scale on us individually. It's everywhere you look. And
Okay.
the unfortunate part is it appears to be normal. This is just the way it
Yeah.
is, the way life is, Brad. Can't be any other way. And I hear it. I hear the pushback when I share this idea.
Okay. So let's take someone in such a situation, right? That's thinking exactly how you just described. Like, how can I do that? Like, so like what is your advice to start getting out of this like rut that is just on and on again with this uh irrational view perspective that was chosen about events and to actually start, whatever, moving on from that and
Well, yeah, I
making a
mean,
new
it's
story. How do they do it?
there's got to be a desire and an intention, right?
Hmm.
That those two things have to be in place. If you just hear this podcast, yeah, that sounds pretty weird. I don't know about these channels, and yeah, it sort of makes sense, but not really. And there's no way I can ever forget this terrible thing from my past, right? That probably pretty common responses. People listening to this are going to have. So the question is, do you want to continue to live in, and believe it or not, we were going to originally do this podcast, we were going to do it on the subject of limiting beliefs. And we thought about it for a little bit. And I thought this podcast would be a little bit better. Baked into this is all these limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves are, right. Those beliefs are formed by us telling the old story over and over and over again that generates the limiting belief that we carry. Yeah.
Hmm.
But, and to answer your question, I can't help but think of the Neville Goddard ladder exercise, which I think I've mentioned on a previous podcast, but I'll tell it again briefly. But this is Neville Goddard would train his students. He would say, I want to teach you something, and this is what you need to do. And he was like, I want you to write down on a piece of paper or a sticky note, and I want you to put it up in front of you so you'll see it, on your car dashboard, on your refrigerator, on your television set, your office desk, wherever you're going to see it, dozens or hundreds of times a day. And he just said, I want you to write down, I will not climb a ladder. That was that was the phrase he would have them write down. But he said, every night as you're falling asleep, when you lay down to go to sleep, I want you to imagine and visualize yourself climbing a ladder as you drift off to sleep. And he said, within a week, just keep doing this day in and day out. Within a week, you're going to climb a ladder, even though all day long you were telling yourself you aren't going to climb a ladder. You would actually do it almost unconsciously, right? Like, and it happened to me. I climbed a ladder out of a swimming pool when I did the exercise. I didn't even realize it, right? My girlfriend pointed it out to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, there it is. So that shows you how unconscious you go. But here's the point. And are you with me so far on the teaching?
I am with you.
Okay. The point is that it's this imagination thing we're doing constantly, 24/7, the visualization, we're saying, I can't do this. I'm unable to because I can't do this. I can't do that. And so it's not you're not like stopping everything in your day and sitting there thinking about the miserable experience from your past. It's like baked into your daily activities, right? That it comes up. Like, the example, I can't run a mile because I'm overweight, right? That idea, and while it may be physically true at the moment, right? It's this constant replaying of it in our imagination that's generating the result, right? We're delivering the limiting belief to our physical reality by the imagination of it. You follow?
Hmm.
So the fix, of course, is to begin imagining yourself without this limiting belief or this negative past event. that you keep saying, and I guess we have it in here, remembering. Look at that word, remember. It's kind of like the opposite of dismember, right? You're actually putting it together again when you remember something. So you're taking this negative memory of the past and you're rebuilding it in the present moment by imagining this is just the way things are. And you've done that consistently for a month, a year, a decade, 30, 40, 50 years. And that's what keeps giving you the results that you're getting. You see that?
And do you think that because I know people struggle with the crossing the belief about whether imagination is causative.
Yeah.
So do you reckon you actually like need to change your belief about that, or you just not worry about it and just imagine, and just have some faith, or what?
Well, you can believe or disbelieve that idea all you want, right? That's not going to change anything for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can totally believe it's true, but then not change your behavior at all, and you'll see no results,
Mm-hmm.
right? So whether you believe it or not, if you're not going to apply it in some way, then you're never going to get anywhere. And to answer your question from 10 minutes ago, right? A nice intention to start with is something like, I wish to become aware of my limiting negative past beliefs, right? Just, that can be simple as that. I want to become consciously aware when they're affecting me. And that could just be a statement you throw out to the universe.
Well, it
Follow?
seems like we're touching on the name of the podcast here, which is where you write the new story. Right? You got your old thing, but then you need to like write it write a news story before it even happens. Just go ahead and write it.
That's the easiest way to do things, right? It's the most impossible to believe way to do things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I mean, if you're gonna tell a new story, then that means you can't also be telling the old story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's one or the other. You follow?
Oh yeah.
I just think people don't believe it's possible to just tell the news story.
Mm-hmm. It seems like there's a energy shifting of the energy. Like take the energy out of telling the old story. And the more you take out, the more you'll just have, and you'll probably find ways to write the new story.
Yeah, it might just kind of happen.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we have this
Yeah.
problem. Go ahead.
Well, I just, we notice how it's so difficult to get people to just put their imagination and intent on a new thing. And I was just wondering if that's because it doesn't seem like that can possibly do anything. Often people think, well, it just doesn't seem to work. I don't know. Maybe that's because literally all their energy is tied up in perpetuating the past already. So it's like
That's
there's
right.
actually no new energy being applied to that, just like a visualization without any strong energy behind it.
Right. More or less, that's right. Right. There's some people who hear about this idea. Almost everybody thinks I want millions of dollars. Right. So almost everybody tries that. Right. Okay. If this is real, then all I have to do is lay on my couch for 20 minutes, once a day and think about being a millionaire. And they do that, but those 20 minutes are completely obfuscated by the rest of their day where they say, I can't afford this and I can't go out to eat at this restaurant. It's too expensive. And I can't buy the best foods at the grocery store because they're too expensive, right? So the rest of their day, they're energizing. I don't have enough money. I can't. I'm too poor, right?
Hmm.
So that
Right, right, right.
20-minute visualization session never comes into effect because it's not only does it not seem real because you're saying it isn't real, right? You're saying my imagination isn't real. Only the numbers I see on my computer screen on my bank balance is real. So there's enough of that problem in the way. But this is what most people try. And it's the hard way to do things, especially for the thing you want to change the most. right? Whether it's your finances, your relationship, or your health, or your career, like the thing you're least happy about, right? You try to go from this state of least happy about things to here's how I'd be completely blissful about this subject. And it's too wide a gap. Yeah.
Hmm. That's pretty
Yeah.
funny to just spend a couple of days on it. Like someone was like, I learned about this thing called science and engineering and inventing, and you can use it to build a rocket ship. And then you hear about it and you're like, well, I'll try for 2 days and see if I get a rocket ship. And if I don't get a rocket ship, well, it's probably bunk.
Right. Right. This is kind of the attitude people give this. And, they go into it thinking it's not right. So they are already walk into it with a limiting belief that it's not possible, or this is woo woo stuff that almost all but kills it if you're starting from that general attitude.
Hmm.
And and going from $100,000 in debt to a billionaire, it's such a huge leap. Like, oh yeah, like I'm going to do that in a week, right, or a month, right? That's ridiculous, right? Maybe someone who's $100,000 in debt, maybe their goal should be to get it to 50,000 in debt or something, right? And then from 50, try to get it to zero,
Sure.
right? Like they make these incremental steps rather than, well, if this is true, then I could just wake up tomorrow morning and I'm a billionaire.
Well, it even seems like here the things that we want to write into the story isn't so much even about like how much wealth we have or anything like that, but it's more like, like stuff about uh just redefining events in our lives or letting go of them and just being like, I'm a good person or I feel happy.
Yeah,
Like
just
I
yeah,
mean a lot to the people around me and I spread love. Like, that's a bit easier than I got $1 billion in the bank on
that's
Tuesday.
that's right. Yeah. So, and that's really what right. If you want to know the real thrust of this, it isn't to manifest $1 billion or all these
Right.
sorts of things. It's to get to this place where you're happy and grateful right where you are. That's
Hmm.
when things really start to happen for people, right? And they're just like, I'm just I'm going to be glad for what I have now. And that's it. There's nothing. The future doesn't matter and the past doesn't matter. Here I am enjoying this moment. That's where everything is pointing.
Right.
But we've got a million ideas about, well, at my age, I should have this much in savings and I should be able to retire at that age and got to pay the kids' education. Right. There's a million ideas floating around in the
Hmm.
minds of the average person in the West that make them unhappy. And this this I this is all because we keep telling the old story.
Hmm.
That's why these things knock us out of our, state of happiness. And this is the guidance coming from these channels is it's way easier for us now to tell this new story or stop telling the old story. Like it's more
Right.
achievable than it's ever been. And you just
Right.
have to put forth some effort. Go ahead.
Because it seems like what we've got here from most people, it seems like more than a story, or it's like a full on detailed account of history, everything that happened, what it all meant, how it led to the next thing, how that led to the next thing, what could have been done but wasn't done for specific reasons, and how that played out, and how it all arrived to the present day. And it was all caused by this natural flow of historical events that were uh, caused by my stupid fault and bad luck. And it's just now it just all sucks and can't get out of this because of that, and I can't get out of this because of that, and there's this problem and that problem. It's all just one big mess, and
That's right.
that's
Yeah.
the abstraction of like a story, right?
Yeah, that's the proliferation of it, and baked into all of that, right? We believe so many lies; it's unbelievable, right? And
Hmm.
specifically about cause and effect, and we've been sold a million lies, and of course, those lies are all victimhood, and the bad guys and the good guys and the perpetrators and the evil ones, right? All these stories right, are baked in to these stories that we're telling ourselves, and almost none of them are true. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
the thing that happened that, sucked, right? That you aren't happy about in your life, it happened, right? But the reason it happened and how it happened and, the results of it's happening, right? Those things are all, we've been lied to about primarily.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, like I
And
noticed that a lot of the logic between that people are using to like link certain thoughts or link certain events or to reason their way through their story, a lot of that reasoning comes from really illogical mainstream media stuff. They're just telling you how the world works. And you're like, yeah, and all that stuff is just layered so deeply through the story that it's just like tangled mess of nonsense, really.
right? Yeah. So, a great example, we bring it up all the time is, American politics. And, and I tell people this all the time too. And, some people hear it, but, there are some people out there that are absolutely miserable all day long because Biden is the president, right? I mean, they can sit and tell you stories for weeks on end about all the ridiculous, stupid things that Biden is doing or has done that makes his or her life miserable, right? There are other people. There are other people that say, no, it was when Trump was president that he made their life miserable. And right, and they got a laundry list of things that they hate about Trump, and they can go on and on and on for weeks on end about it. And inside those same frames, there are people who could care less who the president is and doesn't affect them at all in any way. They don't even think about it, right? Doesn't matter.
Mm.
So that's the spectrum, right? These are the stories that people are telling. There's just example of you. Yeah, you can find a million stupid things that Trump did or Biden did or is doing or has done. And you can tell yourself that, yeah, that's made my life miserable. And you can provide examples because you were telling that story. This, that, and the other thing happened under Trump. And look what it resulted. I lost my job or my marriage ended or right, I went bankrupt and on and on and on we go. And they'll attribute all of the misery to a guy they never even met. Right. And so this
Hmm.
is I'm giving just the broadest example of, of believing all these nonsensical ideas as what's the cause of your misery. And it's the same thing with the past life errors, mistakes, misfortunes, negative situations that happen in our lives, right? They are not affecting you now unless, right? Unless you keep telling that story. And then it's affecting you greatly. Did you follow
Right.
that?
Well, sure. I mean, it's like if you believe it's affecting you, then it's affecting you because
Right,
you're going to act like it's affecting you. So there you go. So you're going to get results based on the actions that have been performed based on the belief that it's affecting you. So
right.
it's going to be a different set of actions than if you believe it's not affecting you.
Like, that's your power, right? Your creative power is to say, yeah, I'm going to keep remembering this negative thing about my past, and it's going to result in me suffering and feeling miserable. I can do that. I have that power that I can do that to myself. And what these channels are saying is it's going to become so utterly miserable to keep doing that you're almost going to be forced to stop unless you're just like masochistic, right? You're just sadistic. You love torturing yourself, right? And it just defines you, it is who you are. This makes me who I am. And that's a problem in this is that some people have had negative events and they say, well, it turned me into the person I am today. It made me a stronger person. But I've got to keep rebuilding this, negative event. Some people will stick with that. And these channels are saying is you're not going to be able to keep doing that in the coming period ahead. And really, the question is, why would you want to? Right? Forget the channels, forget the changing eras, or whatever it may be going on, right, in consciousness, why would you want to keep telling this negative story about your past? That's the question.
Ugh, boring.
Boring, yeah. It's self-defeating, isn't it?
Yeah, that's almost as bad as boring.
Even if none of this was true, right? We can all take a seat on the perch and see that it's like worrying, right? It doesn't do you any good to think about a future you don't want, right? Which is what worrying is, right?
Mhm.
Everybody can see that. Doesn't, a 5-year-old can see that. Yeah, it's not helping at all for me to sit and worry about what, this thing might happen that I don't want. It's the same principle as remembering this negative stuff about your past.
Maybe two directions we could go here. We could go into two specifics that kind of come out of this disempowering story, such as victimhood and self-doubt. Or we could go into, what a new story kind of sounds like.
Yeah, well, and you hit it right. So we have the fear, worrying on the one end, but what this teaching is the shame, the guilt, the blaming, the criticizing, the victimhood, right? That's the reliving the past, right? That's
Hmm.
the emotions that those elicit, right? So what does telling a new story look like? I wish I could say, here's how you do it, right? And I think I said at the outset, there's no uh, roadmap for here's exactly how you should do it, right? Obviously, we all have slightly different ideas about things, but having the freedom to try and make a real effort at this is what the channels are saying is all that's needed, right? Is
Oh,
literally,
okay.
literally
All right.
just putting this into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make an even bigger idea out of this here in a second. But that's what they're saying is like if you just give it some effort, right, to tell a new story, then
Mm-hmm.
when the old story arises, we're not saying that you're not going to ever remember the old story again, but when you see it happening, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
quickly see how it conflicts with your new story. So you won't dwell
Right,
on
right,
it.
right,
You won't
right.
ruminate it on as long, right? Because you're now working on this new story.
Right.
And again, it's not this, let's go from, in the poorhouse to being a billionaire. That's, a bit of a stretch, right? But this new story is just this, I have the power to create a life that I want.
Yeah.
And, the basis of that life is, happy, healthy, harmonious. Right.
Right. Like if you wanted to start your story, you could say, today's the first day of my life. I have free will and I have the power to create what I want. And I create happiness, healthiness, health, and what did you say?
Yeah. You could just say, I am happy, healthy, and harmonious.
Yeah. And the first line of my story is I am happy, healthy, and harmonious.
Yeah.
And
And
then, like, as long as once you've committed to that, and as we said, you don't need to like be a professor of writing stories. Just like as long as you have something to remind yourself is that you're not telling the old story. As soon as the new old story comes up, you just go, "Oh, that thing." Anyway, I'm gonna think about something else, and that's all
right.
you need to do.
Right. And, key in this, right, is if you it's not enough. It's just like saying I'm grateful for my children and my wife and my parents and my house, right? There's this gratitude idea isn't a bunch of thoughts strung together, right? It's a feeling that matters, right? It's the
Hmm.
feeling of gratitude that matters. So when you make a statement like I'm happy, healthy, harmonious, right? What feeling is associated with your happiness? So if you really spend a moment on that, you're going to get an image visualization of what feeling happy looks like
Hmm.
and harmonious and healthy, right? Whatever those things are, right? If I was perfectly healthy, I could go out and run a mile in 6 minutes, right? So you imagine yourself running, 6 minute mile or something, right? And so there's a feeling associated with that. Everyone has a different. Other people, it may be walking around the block may be a feeling of great health, right? So there's no one thing, but it's the once you make the assertive statement that I have the power to be happy, healthy, harmonious, you then have to have those feelings associated with it, because it's the thought plus the feeling that forms the belief. Yeah, we did that in the last
Mm-hmm.
went over this in the last pair podcast. I'm not going to do it all over again, but that's it. We have these thoughts, right? They bunch together, they create feelings. We have this group of thoughts that produce these feelings, and then we get the result. So
Mm-hmm.
that positive news story affirmation, whatever it is for a person, right? That's got to have the associated feelings. And those associated feelings typically produce imaginative visualizations. And then those enhance the feelings, right? This is what harmonious feels like to me. Fill in the blank. Yeah.
Sounds pretty easy.
Yeah. It's breathtakingly
It is
easy.
easy.
It just sounds impossible. It
Yeah, it
doesn't,
sounds difficult, but
right.
it's
So
it's the complete opposite of difficult.
yeah, it's not difficult. It just sounds like it flies in the face of what we've all been brainwashed into believing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? No one ever told us that our imagination generates our reality. Never been
It sounds
taught.
like if you're like you can fly and it's not difficult. It sounds difficult, but it's not. Because once you believe you can fly, you just fly.
Right? It's well, it's like, do you believe you can walk?
Right.
Right? Like, when's the last time you thought about whether or not you could walk or not? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You just walk, right? As long as you've been forming memories, you've been walking.
Right.
Right?
Even there was a time in your life where you literally couldn't walk, and that would have seemed impossible, and then you just walked.
Yeah, and you don't have any memories of that time, right? Most of us anyway, before 3 years old, right? We're usually walking before we're forming memories. But yeah, it's just this thing that you do. So and your imagination carries that power, right? Like, it is possible to fly in your imagination. And again, that's a kind of an outrageous thing to imagine doing, right? In relationship to what we believe is possible today. But it's not impossible to feel happy, healthy, harmonious, and
Mm-hmm.
what those feelings mean to you. And maybe you just pick one of those things. I just want to feel happy, right? Like, what does feeling happy feel like to me, right? And again, everyone
Mm-hmm.
has a different idea of it, so there's no one way you can say, here's how you feel happy. But that your mind starts to go, your imagination starts to go. This is what happiness feels like, and that's what you want. You want the feelings, right? That's the creative energy, right? The energy in motion, the emotions, right? That's what we're looking for. So that's vital in telling a new story. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like to me, it makes like perfect sense and seems really easy, and that everyone should just do it tomorrow and every single day.
Right. Well, now here's where I expand the idea. So some people are going to think, well, my life's I'm pretty happy, healthy, and harmonious. Everything's pretty good in my life. Great. Now, right, do this on behalf of mankind. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So send love to Biden. Send love to Trump. Right. Don't say all politicians are, liars and snakes, and the banksters are killing us, and inflation's going to wipe us out. Right. That's a story we're all telling too. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is corrupt, and that's evil, and this one's Satan worshiping, and these people sold their soul to the devil, right? Like, those are all stories we're all telling too on the collective, and we can also change those stories, right? And
Mm-hmm.
tell positive story. Like, these people are gonna stop being, right? Everyone's gonna, in this area is gonna, start telling the truth, and things are gonna get better here, and things are already getting better there. And so we can, even if you are generally happy with your life in the spot that it's in, you can do this for your loved ones and your friends, as well as humanity in general. So yeah, this is the greater good idea, right? For those of us who are generally happy with our own lives in general, or have the time, energy, and wherewithal to work on behalf of not only ourselves but others, is to stop telling these negative old stories about society and the economy and the government and the politicians and all the other, corruption and everything that we see out there today, is to ease up on that and tell a new story about those people and institutions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was having a just considering like, what's causing this? Why it's like you've brought it forward saying, the game has changed, right? Maybe there's a changing in the ether or like the this just the rules of the spiritual exchange are changing or something like that. But it, and whether or not that's true, it's you could just another way of putting it, right? For people to like just might be more agreeable for certain types of people is that like there's been a lot of positive, empowering things being put into the collective consciousness recently by a lot of people from a lot of different sources, and I would say this year I've noticed more upgrade in just like the general positivity and knowing just the right way to be, and feel good. It's just more apparent, more detectable, right? And you're, like when you go tell the old story, right? Because you're hurting yourself, that's more apparently wrong. Like you get more signals from your, let's say, inner being or from your body or from your subconscious or something that it's wrong, right? It's gonna feel worse because like whenever you're doing the wrong thing, you get like pain, right? So you're gonna get like more and more excruciating pain as time goes on, as the collective conscious knows better and better that that's the wrong thing, and you keep doing it,
That's right.
right?
That's right. Yeah. It's an up leveling of consciousness. That's one way to look at it, right? And another way to look at it is there's more light. And I first introduced this idea way back in the What Causes COVID podcast from well over a year ago, right? That there's more light hitting our reality than there has been in the recent past. And that's one of the reasons why it's getting harder and harder to deceive and lie and the corruption that's out there, right? It's more
Hmm.
evident to people. So all these things, and that's why, as you said in the bumper script, right? It's going to be harder and harder to keep telling the old negative story because of those very reasons, right? You're going to get these signals that this isn't beneficial to me. This isn't helping. And most people will respond to those signals by stopping doing it, right? But there are going to be some people that are going to insist that they must tell the old negative story for whatever reason. And right, it'll just become sheer raw misery for them. That's what the channels are suggesting. They'll let them keep doing it. They just won't get to do it for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It'll bring them to an end much quicker going forward. Yeah?
Sure, yeah. I got something cool here. It's a quote from our favorite Ayn Rand,
Yes.
and it's I would say it's just when we started to prepare this material, this was the quote that seemed like her addressing what you were talking about, right? So this is from Philosophy Who Needs It, which is a great assembly of some writings that she did all about philosophy. One of the best nonfiction works that she put out. Okay, so it goes, as a human being, you have no choice about the fact that you need a philosophy. Your only choice is whether you define your philosophy by a conscious, rational, disciplined process of thought and scrupulously logical deliberation, or let your subconscious accumulate a junk heap of unwarranted conclusions, false generalizations, undefined contradictions, undigested slogans, unidentified wishes, doubts, and fears thrown together by chance but integrated by your subconscious into a kind of mongrel philosophy and fused into a single solid weight. Self doubt, like a ball and chain in the place where your mind's wings should have grown.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to sum it all up, a mongrel philosophy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But there it is, the word self-doubt, right?
So she talked
And
about a philosophy, but like you could replace this by like, you want to choose an old story that gets all that self doubt, or you want to choose a new story, like a good positive story.
Right. No more self-doubt. Like it's self-empowerment, right? And
Hmm.
yeah, that's she's right. It is this conglomeration of nonsense, right? Like half the things she said there, like false generalization, that's a lie, right? Unwarranted conclusions, that's a lie, right?
Hmm.
Undefined contradictions. All these things are these lies that congeal into this nonsensical
Right.
belief system.
That
And
hold your story together.
right. That keeps it's like held together by baling wire and scotch tape, but it's still you keep holding it together by just rebuilding it over and over and over again. And it doesn't
Hmm.
benefit. There's no benefit to continuing on with it. And
Yeah.
right, self-doubt
Like it
is
will disintegrate if you leave it and just leave it alone. Like
that's
forget about
right.
it and leave it alone. Turn your back on it. Don't worry about it at all.
Yeah, and that's the guidance. That's the title of this. Tell a new story. Right? If you, that's the easiest way to go
Hmm.
about this. Instead of trying to discover and pick apart all these
Yeah.
nonsensical ideas that you've patched together over the years, just tell a new story and just keep telling it. Be consistent every day. Just keep telling. It's not going to
Yeah.
materialize overnight. You just stick with it. I am smart enough to do blah 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 blah. I am attractive enough to do blah blah. I do have enough money to do blah 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 blah. Right? Keep telling that story, right? And that story is
Hmm.
going to change some feelings, and those feelings are going to change your imagination, and that's all going to congeal into a new experience. That's the
Or
idea.
else.
Yeah, or else stick with the old story and right live out a life of quiet, miserable desperation.
With a ball and chain of self-doubt where your wings should have grown.
Yeah,
That sounds
yeah.
just so bad.
Right. And what these channels are saying is that everybody's going to grow the wings now. They're not going to let you live 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years in this with this ball and chain. It's as I
Mm.
mentioned to you right before this podcast, in a sense, we're almost losing a bit of our free will capabilities. So it's like we're
The free
not
will
going to
to be miserable, just
yeah.
taken
Yeah.
away. Give it back, damn you.
Right? Like nobody would want it if they knew what they were doing. But yeah, that free will option is with being withdrawn from the chessboard, if you will.
Yeah, right. And by whatever means, who knows, whether it's by just the collective consciousness upgrading itself and you're just not compatible anymore, or higher powers are doing it deliberately. It's happening.
Right? Kind of all connected. But yeah, it's just we've had this experience for a long enough time, and the experience is coming to an end. At least in this realm. Right? There's probably other places you can go to have that experience further if you so enjoy it. But yeah, that's it. That's the
Yep.
whole idea. So whether you hear it better as tell a new story, which is the fastest, easiest way to do things, or stop telling the old story, which is maybe the more believable way to go about things,
Mm.
right? I can work on not retelling the story over and over and over again. And again, this is, like I said, if this wasn't unanimous coming from dozens and dozens of different channels, I don't know that I'd be sharing this idea, but it's so prolific out there right now that I feel like I had to get it out there and let people mull it over.
Okay, okay. So we'll
So
probably leave it there then.
yeah, there you have it. Another
Well, I would say that right after this is the absolute perfect time to get involved with Take Your Power Back course. Because, oh my God, if you're like, we're sitting there right now going, you know what? I am going to tell a new story. I'm going to change my life. Well, you are ripe. You are ready. You go to the
yeah,
mindblownzone.com right now and look at courses and go take your power back and start today. Like, time to go.
yeah. I was
Time to
going to say the
thrive.
same thing, right? This is a perfect example of absolutely positively taking your power back in a powerful way. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
and little victories lead to bigger victories. So taking this one on is gonna no matter what, you're gonna feel empowered that you actually have the option to tell the new story. That's
Hmm.
enough in and of itself to get the wheels grinding. And the course obviously helped take you to the next level. But this is it, folks. And I'm a huge proponent believer. I've seen a lot of changes over the last 6 months or so in my life. Nothing major. I didn't go from being, an exionaire to a zillionaire or anything like that, but I wasn't trying. So, it's we're all working on it. And the more of us working on it, the easier it gets. We failed to mention that, by the way. The more people trying this, the less easy it's going to be to do the old thing we've been doing for thousands of years, which
Mm.
is rebuilding the old story. So the Take Your Power Back course will obviously help immensely in that regard as well. We look forward to people joining.
All right. Beautiful.
There
I
you
guess
have it.
that's that for that one.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Matt, again for your questions and organization. And thanks, everyone, for listening. We will catch you next week in our next podcast.
All right. Thanks for telling us a good story, Brad.
All right. Tell a new story. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.